Good day, class. I am Dr. Tolentino, and today we're going to talk about the eye. Okay. There are four slides that we're going to view this afternoon. We have the eyeball, the eyelid, the lacrimal gland, and the optic nerve. Okay. So first, we have the lacrimal gland. It's located at the superolateral orbit. It is a serous gland divided into lobes, and it makes our tears. You can see here, it is at the superolateral orbit near the temple, and it is a serous gland. Okay. You can see here that the gland is divided into lobes by a connective tissue. Okay. This is a connective tissue septa that divides the tissue or the gland into lobes. Okay. It is made up of tubulo-alveolar acini surrounded by myoepithelial cells, which helps to squeeze and expel the contents of the acini into ducts. So for the ducts, we have the smaller intralobular excretory duct found inside the lobes with the acini inside this lobe, okay? And larger interlobular excretory duct found in the connective tissue that divides the lobes, okay? So they are lined by two layers of low columnar pseudostratified epithelium, while your intralobular excretory duct is lined by simple cuboidal or columnar epithelium. So I'll show you a picture of these ducts later. Okay, so this diagram is listed from the book, and to the left is a histologic section of a lacrimal gland from another source. Okay, so this is not what we have in our slides, but this is from another source because it shows a better picture. Okay, so you can see in the book diagram, we have a serous type of cells in the acini and a central duct or interlobular excretory duct within the connective tissue of the glands separating the lobes. Okay, so this is one lobe, this is another lobe separated by a connective tissue, and inside the connective tissue is a duct called the interlobular excretory duct. While inside the lobes, we have the intralobular excretory duct. So in the histologic section, you can see serous acini, and this is one lobe of the gland. And we cannot see it clearly, but there is a connective tissue here. And inside the connective tissue is a central duct or interlobular excretory duct, okay, in the connective tissue separating the lobes. Okay. So this is the slide we actually have in the laboratory. You can see that the serous tubulo-alveolar acini are here. They produce the secretions, the tears, and releases them into the ducts, okay? We have the bigger interlobular duct inside the connective tissue. This is the connective tissue separating the gland and lobes. Okay, you can see that they are lined with two layers of low columnar cells or a pseudostratified epithelium. So either of the two is correct. While your intralobular ducts are inside these lobes, inside the lobes of the gland, together with the acini. So they are lined by simple cuboidal or columnar epithelium. So they are simple cuboidal. Okay. Okay, let's go to the next slide. The eyelid has two sides. The exterior is made up of thin skin, and the interior is lined by the palpebral conjunctiva. It's a mucosa. Okay, so the skin side is made up of stratified squamous epithelium with papillae along with its hair follicles, its sebaceous and sweat glands. While your conjunctival side is made up of a low stratified columnar epithelium with goblet cells. So I'll show you a clearer image later. And the inner side also has a plate of connective tissue right here. And it's called the tarsus. So inside the tarsus, inside this plate of connective tissue, you can find the tarsal glands, which are sebaceous glands with a central duct. Okay, it's a central duct that opens into the eyelid margin. So they will produce an oily substance that coats the tear film of the eye to prevent the evaporation. Okay, so it produces an oily stuff oily substance that covers your tear film, that covers the eye so it does not evaporate. Okay, so that's the function of your tarsal gland, and it's also called your meibomian gland. So at the eyelid margin, you can find your eyelashes. So these are large, long hairs with their associated sweat glands called gland of Zeiss. And there also are large sweat glands called glands of Moll. So remember these three eyelid glands, the tarsal glands called the meibomian glands, and the two glands near the eyelashes called the gland of Zeiss, which is sebaceous, and the glands of Moll, which is a sweat gland. Okay. So we also have three sets of muscle in the eyelid. The big orbicularis oculi, which is a skeletal muscle. A small ciliary muscle of Riolan, which is a skeletal muscle also found near the eyelashes. And the superior tarsal muscle of molar, which is a smooth muscle. Usually, we can only see the big orbicularis oculi in our slides, okay? And the other two muscles are very small or hard to identify. So, okay, so there are also an abundance of connective tissue other than your tarsal plate. This is many connective tissue around here, okay? So to orient us, a diagram of the eyelid is lifted from the book on the right, and the actual side we have on the lab on the left, okay? So the skin side is the outer side. You know that it is the skin because it has hair follicles, okay? It has sebaceous and sweat glands, okay? The conjunctival side is on the opposite side. Okay, so the inner side or the conjunctival side has a plate of connective tissue right here. It's called the tarsus. So inside this tarsus, you can find the tarsal glands or the meibomian glands, which are sebaceous glands. So these glands are my clue that it is the inner conjunctival side. So when you see this, automatic, this is the inner conjunctival side. And on the skin side, you can see the hairs, okay? So when you see hairs, it's the skin side, okay? So sorry. So between the skin and the conjunctival side, we have the eyelash margin. Here you can find your eyelashes, which are large, long hairs with its associated glands that we will see later in higher magnification. So this outer skin side is made up of stratified squamous epithelium with papillae. You see this? These are like papillae, okay? And it's made up of stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified squamous epithelium with papillae. And of course, you know it's the skin side because you see the hair follicles. And with its associated sebaceous gland. So this is a sebaceous gland which opens into a hair follicle. So you know it's a sebaceous gland, okay? Okay, we cannot see clearly sweat glands here, okay? So that's all for the skin side. Now we go to the conjunctival side. The conjunctival side is made up of low stratified columnar epithelium with goblet cells, okay? So I'll show you a picture later of the goblet cells. Okay, the inner side has the tarsal plate of connective tissue. Here you can find the tarsal glands or the meibomian glands, which are your sebaceous glands. They produce an oily substance, again, that prevents the evaporation of the tear film of the eye, so the eye remain moist. So here you can see also a portion of the orbicularis oculi, which is a big skeletal muscle which opens and closes the eyelid, okay? You can see here the tarsal gland, sebaceous gland, or also called your meibomian gland. This is your palpebral conjunctiva, low stratified columnar with few goblet cells. I'll show you a picture later. So another part of the eye is the eyelash margin or the eyelash and its associated glands. So the photos are lifted from another source because the slide we have does not clearly show us the glands, okay? So this is the eyelash margin. You can see the big hair follicles. This is the eyelash, okay? You still can see the orbicularis oculi in this section because it spans the whole eyelid, okay? So zoom in. So from here, you zoom in to the palpebral conjunctival side, okay? Where we can find the what? The tarsal gland. Again, sebaceous gland with central duct that opens into the eyelash margin. Another name is your meibomian gland, okay? Associated with the eyelash also are two glands. The sweat glands or the glands of Moll, you can see it here. It's the sweat gland with its duct, and the sebaceous gland of Zeiss, okay, are always associated with hair follicles, right? So your sebaceous gland also are always associated with your hair follicles. So this is your clue that this is a sebaceous gland, and this is your eyelash. So what is the sebaceous gland of the eyelash? It's the gland of Zeiss, okay? Gland of Zeiss. And the sweat gland is called the gland of Moll, okay? While on the eyelid, let's also talk about the conjunctiva. So it's a transparent mucous membrane which lines two surfaces actually, okay? The inner surface of your eyelid or the conjunctival side where it's called the palpebral conjunctiva, and where it meets the eyeball, the conjunctiva folds. You can see it folds here and reflects or covers the sclera or the white portion of the eye on the anterior part. Okay. It is lined by stratified columnar epithelium. You can see the columnar cells in many layers with many goblet cells. Okay. The lamina propria is made up of loose connective tissue. Okay. Again, inner surface of the eyelid, palpebral conjunctiva, folds over and covers the white of the eye on its anterior part. Bulbar conjunctiva. Both are stratified columnar epithelium with goblet cells. Okay, let's go to the eyeball or the eye proper. Okay, use your imagination, especially in this topic, because what you're gonna expect from the book diagrams is gonna be very different than what we have in the lab. Okay, compare the two. Okay, it's very different. So we have so many parts of the eye, as you can see here, but we will discuss just the important parts individually. Okay, and let's go about it systematically. So the eyeball in general is surrounded by three concentric layers. Okay, an outer tough fibrous connective tissue layer composed of your sclera and your cornea, fibrous tunic. Okay, the middle layer composed of a highly vascular pigmented choroid, ciliary body, and your iris. Collectively, this is called the vascular tunic, or these three is also called your uvea. Okay. The innermost layer is the photosensitive retina, which has a pigmented and a neural layer. Okay. Outer is the fibrous tunic. Middle is the vascular tunic. And the innermost is the photosensitive retina. Okay. So, not a part of these three layers actually is the lens. Okay, it is located suspended in the anterior middle eye. It is actually a transparent biconvex structure which is suspended behind your iris. Okay, which focuses the light that comes into the retina at the back. So this is just the stain that makes it look pink, but in reality, it is actually clear. Okay, so it lies behind your iris. Okay, the anterior chamber and the cornea. So I'll tell you the different parts later. Okay, so the pupil is actually the opening within the center of the iris, and behind it is the lens. So we have this area called the equator of the lens. Okay, it is located at the side or the peripheral side of the lens. Okay, and you can see here you have this monolayer epithelium which actually continues into the anterior of your lens. So imagine this is covered by an anterior epithelium. Okay, so at the side, this anterior lens epithelium at the equator, the epithelial cells will elongate. You can see here, they become very thin and long, okay, to form your lens fibers, which makes up the lens stroma, okay? Again, anterior epithelium goes to the equator and becomes long. The epithelium becomes a long cell fiber and become fibers that make up the stroma, okay? So this equator is also the site for attachment of the lens, okay? For zonular fibers that connect the lens to the ciliary body right here. So the lens doesn't just float in place, Actually, it is held by strong fibers called zonular fibers. Okay? Because we cannot see the fibers because they get destroyed during tissue processing. But actually, let's imagine that they stretch from the ciliary body to the lens, attaching at the equator like this. Okay? So in reality, the zonular fibers will be here. Okay. You can also see the small cracks or clefts in the lens stroma because of specimen processing. So as you can see, the specimen processing or the preparation of these tissues into a slide will destroy or disfigure the actual structure of the eye. So it's quite hard to imagine. Okay. So let's just try our best. Okay. So a closer look at the anterior lens. So this is the front of the lens. For example, right here, this is the front of the lens. Okay. It is covered by actually a thin, simple, cuboidal epithelium. Also, a thin carbohydrate-rich lens capsule also encircles the lens. And this capsule is actually the basement membrane of the anterior lens epithelium. Note that the posterior aspect of the lens does not have an epithelial layer, so it has no capsule. So since only the anterior epithelium is present, so there will only be an anterior capsule. And this capsule will thicken with age, while the posterior part of the lens does not. Okay. So let's go through the three tunics or layers of the eye with their corresponding parts. First, we have the fibrous tunic, okay, made up of the sclera posteriorly, okay, you can see here, and the cornea anteriorly, okay, sclera and cornea. So the sclera is the white of the eye. It is actually made of an opaque, white, tough connective tissue. So the white of the eye is a tough connective tissue. It's a dense, irregular connective tissue rich in type 1 collagen fibers. Although it is white, we can still find melanocytes in the deeper regions like in the lamina fusca. Okay? So no need to remember the three layers of the sclera. Just remember the sclera is made up of dense irregular connective tissue, type 1 collagen. The sclera makes the posterior 5/6 of the fibrous tunic, and the other 1/6 is the anterior, which is the cornea that we will discuss later. And the junction between the sclera and the cornea is called your limbus. Okay? And also at the back of the eye, where the optic nerve exits, we also have a transition between the sclera, the connective tissue of your eyeball, and the dura mater at the back, which is the connective tissue of the brain. On the left is a slide from another source. So other sources have better slides than us because you can see here it's quite distorted. We can see that the sclera is the outermost tunic, just surrounded by a little connective tissue of your orbit. To the right is the lab slide. You can see anteriorly, this is the sclera, okay? Anteriorly, it becomes the cornea, okay? And the sclerocorneal junction is called your limbus, okay? Remember, the fibrous tunic's posterior 5/6 is the sclera, and the fibrous tunic's anterior 1/6 is your cornea, okay? The junction is the limbus, okay? Let's go to the cornea. It is a thick, transparent, non-vascular structure of the anterior eye. It covers your anterior chamber. So what is this anterior chamber? Okay, let's go back to the previous slide, okay? So you can see that the cornea covers the anterior chamber right here. The anterior chamber is an area between the iris and the cornea, while the posterior chamber is an area located between the iris and the lens. Okay, more about these chambers later, okay? Just know that the cornea will cover the anterior chamber, and they have 5 layers. The cornea has 5 layers. So the eye actually has many different structures with many layers. So I made mnemonics of some to help us better remember each, okay? So for the cornea, the 5 layers are the A, B, C, D, E. A for the anterior corneal epithelium, actually just the corneal epithelium. We just added the word anterior to it Okay, so we can remember where it is and to make it the letter A. B for Bowman's membrane or the anterior limiting membrane. C is for the corneal stroma or also known as the substantia propria. Okay, D for Descemet's membrane right here. And E or Descemet's membrane is also called the posterior limiting membrane. And E is for the corneal endothelium. Just let's call it endothelium for it to become letter E. So that's it. A, B, C, D, E. Okay. A, anterior corneal epithelium, most anterior and faces the environment. It's made up of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium with many nerve endings. Okay, remember this? What is it made of? I might ask this in the exam. Okay. Non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium with many nerve endings. This is why we feel pain when we touch the anterior part of the eye, okay? So the Bowman's membrane or the anterior limiting membrane here is actually the basement membrane of the anterior corneal epithelium. It is a cellular and made up of collagen fibers, type 1 collagen fibers, okay? Corneal stroma right here is also known as the substantia propria. It's the body of the cornea and the thickest layer, making about 90% of the whole cornea. It is made up of parallel bundles of dense connective tissue, which is all type 1 collagen fibers and thin fibroblasts. So you noticed something? Remember when asked, most of the connective tissue of the eye is made up of type 1 collagen fibers. So when you're not sure, when I ask what type of fibers is found here, you can just answer. If it's the eye, you can just answer type 1 collagen fibers and you will be most of the time right because most of the fibers are type 1 collagen fibers. Okay, D. Descemet's membrane or the posterior limiting membrane is the thick membrane. It's a thick limiting membrane, thick basement membrane of the layer below it, the endothelium. Okay, so the Descemet's membrane or posterior limiting membrane is the thick basement membrane of the endothelium. Okay, E, endothelium or the corneal endothelium lined by simple squamous epithelial cells. It is the innermost surface of the cornea and faces the anterior chamber. So it forms the Descemet's membrane and it also has many sodium pumps to pump out your salt and solutes outside of the cornea. So where salt goes, water follows, okay? So it keeps the inside of the cornea dehydrated, okay? Pump the salt out, the water will also go out, and the result is the cornea is dehydrated, okay? It helps in its clarity, okay? To let the light pass through, okay? Remember the corneal epithelium, the corneal layers mnemonic, A, B, C, D, E, anterior corneal epithelium, Bowman membrane, corneal stroma, Descemet membrane, and endothelium. But not all these layers can be seen in our slide. For example, the Bowman's membrane and Descemet's membrane are so thin, they cannot be seen clearly. So here, actually in our slide is, you can see the outermost anterior corneal epithelium. What is the lining epithelium? Non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. I might ask that in the exam. Remember, corneal stroma, I might ask what is the type of fiber? Type 1 collagen fiber. And the innermost corneal endothelium lined by simple squamous epithelial cells. Okay. The limbus, also known as the corneoscleral junction, as the name says, is the transition region between the two parts of the fibrous tunic, the cornea and the sclera. And this area is highly vascular. Why? Because it drains the aqueous humor, which is the fluid content of your anterior and posterior chamber. So I will explain about the flow of the aqueous humor later. Just know that the anterior and posterior chamber has aqueous humor and it is drained through this area at the limbus. Okay, so the area of the limbus has the following important structures for the drainage of your aqueous humor. The trabecular meshwork, which are spaces lined with endothelium that allows the fluid to flow into the canal of Schlemm. So these are the smaller endothelium-lined spaces, and the larger canal of Schlemm, on the other hand, drains the fluid back into the aqueous and episcleral veins, or the veins that surrounds the sclera, and delivers the water of the aqueous humor back to the blood. Okay, so let's go to the middle vascular layer containing the choroid, the ciliary body, and the iris. Okay, collectively called the uvea, meaning grape in Greek. Grapes. Why is it grapes? It is because it's darkly stained, darkly pigmented, and overall round in shape. So it's like a grape. Okay. So your vascular tunic is sandwiched between the fibrous tunic, the sclera, and the photosensitive retina. So it's found in the middle. It's a middle vascular tunic. Okay. So the posterior vascular portion and posterior pigmented portion of the middle vascular tunic is actually your choroid. It is made up of loose connective tissue with melanocytes. Okay, loose connective tissue with melanocytes. Responsible for the dark color of this layer. Okay, and it's important for the choroid to be darkly pigmented. Why? Because it absorbs any stray light after it hits the retina, reducing the glare. Okay, so I'll explain that later. Just know that the light from the front of the eye reaches the retina, it's absorbed, it is processed there, and the other light, or the stray light, is absorbed by the choroid. Okay. So it also has many blood vessels to nourish your retina. So the choroid is there to support your retina. It has the following 4 layers. Okay. The the layers are from the outer, meaning from the sclera, to the inner retina. Okay, so we have the following layers in the connective tissue of the choroid. So the suprachoroid lamina, right here, is a layer of connective tissue fibers and melanocytes. Connective tissue fibers with melanocytes. The vascular layer is named as such because it has medium to large blood vessels. You can see here the big blood vessels and also large flat melanocytes. These brown things are your melanocytes. The choriocapillaris layer is actually a network of capillaries with big lumens. These are capillaries, but they are big, okay? So the Bruch membrane is a glassy membrane that separates the choroid from your retina. So it is adjacent to the retinal pigment epithelium. This is the retinal pigment epithelium. And it is made up of the basement membranes of the pigment epithelium and the basement membrane of the choriocapillaris layer. Okay, so you cannot see it here. You can rarely ever see it in most light because it is very thin and transparent. Okay, just imagine it is between the retina and the choroid, the Bruch membrane. Again, like the other layers of the eye, the middle vascular layer has an anterior and posterior part. The anterior continuation of your choroid becomes a thicker layer, a thicker portion called your ciliary body. Okay, behind it, this is the choroid. To the front, it is the ciliary body. Okay, so you can find it surrounding your lens. So like the choroid, it has loose vascular and pigmented connective tissue, okay? But what is different is because it is muscular. It has 3 bundles of smooth muscle cells collectively called the ciliary muscle. So the ciliary muscle contracts and relaxes, and they pull on the suspensory ligaments or the zonular fibers right here that suspends the lens, okay? And because it pulls on the lens, it changes the shape of the lens during accommodation for the focusing of the near and far object. So the lens will adjust its shape to focus on the near object, and that is the function of the muscle in the ciliary body or the ciliary muscle, okay? Just know that the lining epithelium of the ciliary body is continuous with the retina. Okay? In fact, the retina also has the anterior and posterior portion. And this epithelium is the anterior portion of your retina. It is called the pars ciliaris retinae or the ciliary part of your retina, and it is a simple columnar epithelium. Okay, so the ciliary body, as you can notice, this is the ciliary body. It has a highly folded inner surface which forms the ciliary processes, and they project from the inner surface of your anterior ciliary body towards the lens. Okay, each processes has two layers of your epithelium. This is one process of the ciliary body. This is a ciliary process. It has two layers of epithelium, an outer simple columnar epithelium, which is still the pars ciliaris retina, okay, or the anterior extension of your retina. And this epithelium will produce the aqueous humor. And you have the second layer of epithelium, the inner pigmented cells. Again, very important, your ciliary body, particularly your ciliary processes, produce the aqueous humor. Okay, so I also mentioned earlier that there are suspensory ligaments attached to the ciliary processes, which will hold your lens in place, and contractions by the ciliary muscle in the ciliary body will change the lens's shape. Note, I also mentioned earlier, you cannot see suspensory ligaments in tissue sections because the preparation process will destroy them. But in theory, they would be here, okay? You can see ciliary process, suspensory ligament, suspends the lens. It's pulled by the ciliary muscle in the ciliary body and changes the lens shape for accommodation or focusing near objects, okay? The most anterior part of the vascular tunic is your iris. It is the colored portion of the eye. Okay. It partially covers the lens peripherally on all sides. Okay. So it creates actually a small opening in the center called the pupil, which allows the light to enter through the lens into the retina. So in our lab slide, actually, the structure is distorted. The lens is pushed out. And normally the pupil is very small, okay, with the lens behind it. But you can see the pupil is now big and the lens is pushed out. Okay, this is all the fault of the specimen processing, okay? So, but just know that the lens is behind the iris. The iris surrounds the lens on all sides and has a small opening right here called the pupil. Allows the light to enter from the pupil to the lens because this is transparent and it hits the retina at the back. Okay, so the iris is pigmented and opaque. So all the light can only pass through the pupil. So there is no other way for the light to pass except through the pupil in the center. Okay. So it has 5 layers. No need to memorize the layers. Just familiarize, especially where the muscles of the pupil are. Okay, it is in the vessel layer here, and it's in the dilator pupillae muscle layer. Okay, so let us talk about the 5 layers. First, the anterior border layer, most anterior, faces your anterior chamber. Incomplete layer of fibroblasts and melanocytes. Second is your stroma, a poorly vascularized connective tissue layer with melanocytes. Third, the vessel layer. You can see it clearly here that it is a well-vascularized connective tissue at its periphery. This is the peripheral side. And at the center, there are circularly arranged smooth muscle fibers, which is your sphincter pupillae muscle. Smooth muscle at the middle of the vessel layer, sphincter pupillae arranged in a circle, okay? This is your sphincter pupillae. It constricts the pupil during bright light. Fourth, dilator pupillae muscle has its own layer of radially arranged myoepithelial cells that dilates the pupil in the dark light. Radially arranged like the sun, outer layer of muscle dilates the pupil, in dark light. Fifth, posterior surface of the pigmented epithelium layer. Okay? Posterior surface layer or the pigmented epithelium layer is made up of 2 layers of pigmented epithelial cells. Like the ciliary body, it is also lined by the anterior epithelial continuation of your retina. Here, the epithelium is called the pars iridis retinae or the iris part of your retina. Okay, as promised, now that we know all the significant parts of the anterior eye, we can now discuss the flow of the aqueous humor that happens here. First, we divide the eye into anterior section in front of your lens, anterior section, and posterior section behind the lens. So the anterior section is filled with aqueous humor, while your posterior section, called the vitreous body, is a circular body filled with transparent gelatinous material called the vitreous humor. So the anterior portion of the eye is subdivided into two compartments. We have the anterior chamber, AC, right here, anterior chamber between your iris and your cornea, and the posterior chamber right here, PC, between the iris and the lens. Okay, so both the anterior and posterior chambers are filled with aqueous humor. But where does this aqueous humor come from? As mentioned, this aqueous humor is produced by the cells of your ciliary body. Okay, the ciliary epithelium. Okay, it's located at the posterior chamber. Remember, the ciliary body surrounds the lens in the posterior chamber. Okay, so first, the aqueous humor flows into the posterior chamber, goes through the pupil, and into the anterior chamber. And it is drained into the periphery of the cornea at the limbus using the two structures earlier. Remember, the trabecular meshwork and the canal of Schlemm. Okay, so both are at the limbus part. Okay, the corneoscleral junction near here. And finally, all the fluid passes through the trabecular meshwork first and into the canal of Schlemm and back to the blood circulation via the episcleral venous system, okay? Or the blood vessels or the veins surrounding your sclera. The last and innermost layer is the retina. It says here that in general, it is made up of 2 layers, the pigmented and neural layer, but actually it has 10 layers. Okay, it is the innermost photosensitive layer. It is the innermost photosensitive tunic of the eye. Like the rest of your layers, it has an anterior and a posterior portion. The posteriorly is the photosensitive portion and anteriorly is the non-photosensitive portion. The sharp anterior-most boundary of your photosensitive portion of the retina is called your ora serrata. Okay. It is a sharp transition from a thick neural portion. It becomes suddenly a thin epithelial portion anteriorly. And it is called, this transition is called your ora serrata. Okay. As mentioned, the non-photosensitive portion of the retina will continue forward as an epithelium, and they will line the inner ciliary body, called pars ciliaris retinae, or the ciliary part of your retina, and the lining of the posterior iris, called the pars iridis retinae, or the iris part of your retina. Sorry. Okay. So the photosensitive layer of the posterior portion also actually has 10 layers. Okay. So from outer to inner, meaning from your sclera and choroid to the innermost retina, we have the pigmented epithelium, the rods and cones layer, the outer limiting membrane, this thin membrane right here, this outer nuclear layer, the outer plexiform layer, the inner nuclear layer, and the inner plexiform layer. Okay, I have also your ganglion cell layer, the nerve fiber layer, and the thin innermost layer is the inner limiting membrane. So as you can already see, this is going to be the hardest part of the eye topic because it has many different parts and is composed of many different cells. But we will break them down individually later so we can understand what is in each part, okay? But first, orientation is very important when you're studying the retina, okay? To the left is the diagram you can find in the book. And to the right is the histological section, also lifted from the book. They are oriented the same way. The outside is up and the inside is down. outside up, inside down. But the slide we have in the lab, the retina looks like this, okay? Inside up, outside down. Kind of confusing, right? So you don't think of it that way. So always remember where you can see the dark choroid and your sclera, okay, your dark choroid and the pigment epithelium, okay, this dark layer, that is always the outside or the outer side. And we work our way towards the inner. Okay, so I recommend that we start identifying the layers of the retina outside first and going to the inside to avoid the confusion. Okay. Sorry. So the retina is a photosensitive neural layer, which means most of its cells are neurons or nerve cells. However, it has many other types of cells inside it also. So we have the dark staining pigmented epithelium layer. Then we have the most important cells, the nerve cells or the neurons, which are distributed in different layers. So you have the following cells. Photoreceptor cells, which are your rods and cones. Your bipolar and association neurons, which connect the rods and cones to the ganglion cells. And your ganglion cells, which are axons, which axons become the optic nerve, which send the message to the brain. Okay, so these three types of cells are your neurons, okay? And they have their different function, okay? Photoreceptors, bipolar, and association neurons to connect the messages from the photoreceptors to the ganglion cell layer, which also are neurons with axons that become the optic nerve and send the message to the brain. We also have supporting cells or neuroglia to support the function of your neurons, the Muller cells and astrocytes. We will talk about them later. So there are many cells, but you can find their nuclei are grouped into three main nuclear layers. Okay, so you can see the three dark layers. Okay, so the outer nuclear layer contains the nuclei of the rods and cones. The inner nuclear layer has the connecting neurons, the bipolar neurons, association neurons, and amacrine cells. And also with the association neurons are the support cells or the neuroglial Muller cells. While your ganglion cell layer is made up of nuclei of the ganglion cells whose axons become the optic nerve. Okay. So after just my technique of studying the retina, once you already discover what side is outside the darker choroid and the pigment epithelium layer, you work your way inside and you already identify the dark layers, okay? The nuclear layers, the outer nuclear, inner nuclear, and the ganglion cell layer. So you can easily identify the light spaces between them, okay? So speaking of light spaces, we have the plexiform layers, two plexiform layers sandwiched between the three main nuclear layers, which contain synapses. When you say plexiform layer, they have synapses, meaning the axons and the dendrites or the nerve fibers that connect each neuron. So these neurons need to be connected to send the message to the brain. And at the plexiform layer, they have synapses there. They have their connections, the axons and the dendrites. So now let's go to the 10 layers. Again, let's start from the outermost layer, the dark choroid. Okay, you can see the dark choroid, it's the outside, okay? So the layer next to the dark choroid is the outermost, which is your pigment epithelium, okay? The pigment epithelium is a single layer of cuboidal to columnar cells with many melanin granules from where they get their dark color. Okay, as you can see, it is a dark, below it is the choroid, is a dark layer. Also, we have the pigmented epithelium. Right here is the rare Brooks membrane, which separates your choroid from your retina. I mentioned you cannot easily see this because it's very thin. You can see right here, that is the Brooks membrane. It's the glassy membrane separating your choroid and your pigment epithelium. Now back to the pigment epithelium, okay? It is cuboidal to columnar cells with many melanin granules. It is dark. it has different functions. First, because of its color, it absorbs light rays and prevents them from reflecting back through the retina and producing glare. Okay, so imagine the light comes from the pupil to the lens, to the back of the eye, to the retina, and to the rods and cones right here. Okay, if the light is just reflected anywhere and not absorbed, it would be too bright and too hard to see. It's called glare, okay? Um, so to avoid that, the pigment epithelium is dark and helps absorb the excess light. It is the same function with your choroid layer, okay? So they also phagocytose the worn out outer parts of your rods and cones, which are continuously shed in a renewal process. So they eat the worn and the old parts of your rods and cones also. And they also store vitamin A, which is needed to make visual pigments like your rhodopsin, iodopsin, but more about these pigments in physiology, okay? Next, we have the rods and cones layer, which are the photoreceptor cells. They receive the visual stimuli in the form of light, okay, and turn them into chemical signals and then electrical impulses, which are sent to the brain, okay. So it is a neuron. So it has the basic parts of a neuron, okay. The dendrite, the cell body, and your axons. So actually, one photoreceptor cell, because of its big structure, can span 3 layers actually. So the rods and cones layer is only actually the dendrite of the photoreceptor. Okay. If the dendrite is shaped straight, it is rods. If it's conical, it is cones. The cell body or the nucleus right here is um is on another layer called the outer nuclear layer. This layer is only made up of rods and cones cell nuclei, okay, or cell body. The axon part, on the other hand, is also in another layer, the outer plexiform layer. Remember, plexiform layers are where axons and dendrites connect, or synapse, okay. So the rods are the photoreceptors for dim light responsible for seeing black and white, while your cones are receptors for bright light and color vision. Okay. So, sorry. This is your rods and cones layer, but actually this is just the dendrites of your rods and cones. Okay. So the third layer is the outer limiting membrane. Okay. It's a thin layer formed by processes of supportive neuroglial cells. Called the Muller cells, connected to the photoreceptors by your zonula adherens junction. So that's not important. Let's just talk about the Muller cells later. Just remember that this membrane, your outer limiting membrane, separates the rods and cones layer from the outer nuclear layer. So the next layer is the outer nuclear layer. As mentioned, it is made up of the nuclei of your rods and cones. So after the outer nuclear layer, it is the outer plexiform layer, okay? It is a plexiform layer, which means it is a lighter layer with no nuclei, only synapses or connections between neurons. So it's made up of nerve fibers, axons, and dendrites, specifically the axons of the rods and cones, okay? And the dendrites of the bipolar neurons in the next nuclear layer, the inner nuclear layer, okay? Bipolar neurons, dendrites connect to the rods and cones axons at the outer plexiform layer. After the outer plexiform layer is the inner nuclear layer. It is a nuclear layer, meaning it has the nuclei of the association neurons that connect to the photoreceptors, to your ganglion cells. So it also has nuclei of the supporting cells or neuroglia. So it has the following association neurons: bipolar, horizontal, and amacrine. It also has the nucleus of the supporting cell called Muller cells. Okay, so it is very long. This Muller cell is very long. It can extend from the vitreous body at the front of the eye to all the way to the back of the retina with the rods and the cones. Okay, so it helps What does it do actually? So it helps in the homeostasis and metabolism of the neurons because it regulates the extracellular environment by facilitating water and ion transport. So basically, the Muller cells make a good environment for the neurons to function. So these Muller cells, very long, from the vitreous body, from the very front of the retina to the all the way to the back of the retina, near the rods and cones layer, okay? And the rods and cones and the processes of your Muller cells bind together to form this membrane called the outer limiting membrane, okay? So next is the inner plexiform layer, another plexiform layer. So it contains synapses or connections between neurons. So which neurons? The bipolar neurons, axons, connect to the dendrites of the ganglion cells in the ganglion cell layer. Okay, so the rods and the cones synapse to the association neurons, and they in turn synapse to the ganglion cells. So this is how the messages from the photoreceptor cells, the rods and cones, will reach all the way to the front, to the ganglion cells, whose axons become the optic nerve and will deliver the message to the brain. Okay, so your ganglion cell layer, I mentioned, is made up of the nuclei of ganglion cells, which are large multipolar neurons whose axon fibers make up the optic nerve. So they send the visual stimulus to the brain. Okay, so the next layer is the nerve fiber layer. It is made up of the axon fibers of the ganglion cells in the ganglion cell layer. So all these axons are very long fibers that form this thin layer right here at the very front of the retina, and they meet at the back of the eye. Imagine they meet at the back of the eye and they will extend backward to become the optic nerve. Note that at this layer, in the nerve fiber layer, the axons are still unmyelinated. But as they become the optic nerve at the back of the eye, at the back of the sclera, they now obtain myelin sheaths and they become myelinated. Lastly, the innermost layer is the inner limiting membrane. It is a thin membrane at the most front of the retina in contact with your vitreous body anteriorly. So remember the neuroglial cells called the Muller cells, right? So they stretch from the vitreous body, okay, to the rods and the cones, right? And become the outer limiting membrane. So here, actually, their basement membrane of the Muller cells also forms the inner limiting membrane. So the both limiting membranes are made up of your Muller cells, okay? So I also added this mnemonic to hopefully help. The mnemonics is from inner to outer. Remember, unlike how we discussed it, the mnemonics are from inside to outside. Okay, so the individual letters are I for inner limiting, N for nerve fiber, G for ganglion cell, IP for inner plexiform, IN for inner nuclear, OP for outer plexiform, ON for outer nuclear, O for outer limiting membrane, R for rods and cones layer, and P for pigment epithelium. So ING, IP, IN, OP, ON, ORP. Okay? And I read them as ing, ipin, upon, orp. Okay? So it sounds weird, okay? So you can use this or you cannot use this, okay? It's really up to you. If you find it cringy or weird, okay, you can just not use it. But if you do, make sure to remember the meaning of each letter or else the mnemonic would be useless. Also remember, it's from inside to outside, okay? So you do not confuse it. Also, lastly, is a part of the retina is the fovea centralis or just the fovea. It is a depression in the retina. It can be found at the very middle of the back of the eye of the retina, okay? It is inside this macula lutea. So the macula lutea is a small yellow spot located in the center of the posterior portion of the eye. You can use an ophthalmoscope and you can find a yellow layer at the back of the retina. It's called your macula lutea. And at the middle of that yellow spot is a depression called the fovea. So the fovea is the highest concentration of cones and is the area of the highest visual acuity. So the ganglion cell layer and the retinal axons and the other layers that pass in the area of the maculonuclea are pushed to the side of the fovea so that the light can pass directly to the very sensitive cone cells at the center of the fovea. So the fovea is like a hole, and at the bottom, there are many cones that receive the light directly, and it's the area of the clearest vision. Okay, so highest visual acuity because there are many rods and cones here. Okay, let's go to the last slide we have. Finally, the optic nerve. It is formed by the axons, remember, of the ganglion cells found in the nerve fiber layer of the retina. And the nerve fiber layer will converge to the back of the eye to form the optic nerve. It is called the optic disc or the optic papilla where it exits the eyeball. And this area of convergence of the axons, and it passes back to the eye as the optic nerve. Okay, so there is no rods and cones here. At this spot, you cannot see anything. So this is called your blind spot. So I will tell you a little of the blind spot later, okay? As you can see, as it leaves the eyeball in the orbit of the skull, it becomes surrounded by the three meninges of the brain, the pia, the arachnoid, and dura mater. So I'll show you in the next slides. So at the area where it leaves the eyeball, it's called the optic disc, right here, optic disc or the optic papilla. And as it goes more posterior, it becomes the optic nerve. So as you can see, this area is the convergence of the axons from the nerve fiber layer. This is the nerve fiber layer, the axons converge right here, and it passes to the eyeball, out of the eyeball as the optic nerve. So at the optic disc or optic papilla, there is no rods and cones here. You can see the cut, it's cut. There is no rods and cones layer in the middle. Just all axons, okay, to become the optic nerve. So you cannot see anything. So this is called your blind spot right here. You can't see anything there, okay? And there is no rods and cones. So as it leaves the eyeball, in the orbit of the skull, it becomes surrounded by the three meninges. You can see the pia mater directly in contact with the optic nerve, the arachnoid and the subarachnoid space right here, and the dura mater, okay? The arachnoid is very hard to see. So it's just usually the pia and the dura mater, okay? So a clear image on the left lifted from another source. It's better here to see. It's a cross-sectional view. You can see it's surrounded by the three meninges of the brain, the pia mater, dura mater, and arachnoid. So you can see the pia and the dura mater. They're easy to see, okay? So our slide in the lab is to the right. You can see the similar meningeal coverings as the optic nerve will travel to the brain. The pia mater very near the optic nerve. It's the closest, directly opposed, and also the dura mater on the outer part. So I hope you learned something. Please view the slides. This is, for me, quite a difficult topic. So I won't make the exam very complicated, just the things that we have discussed. But be sure to familiarize because the eye is a very complex structure with many parts. So even a simple structure is hard to miss, it's easy to miss if you don't study, okay? So please view the slides. Good luck with your examinations and have a good day, everyone.